All right. So the wonderful guest that I have here is a dear soul, kindred spirit of mine. I had the honor of her sitting at one of my ayahuasca ceremonies. Her voice, she's a singer, wonderful voice that was so soothing, and just her personality. She's a Reiki practitioner as well. Works a lot. At one point in time, her heart was with a lot of kids. I'm pretty sure it is, but does a lot in the aspect of energy healing, the shamanic practices, plant medicine as well. So I wanted her to come and speak. As always, I tell people either teach, speak, whatever it is. We just want to know what you're offering, and I'm pretty sure that it can all be applied, or for us to take another level of understanding this intricate system we're in. And one important thing to tell you all, remember, the medicine does not do the work for you. What you thought was hard in ceremony, that was the easy part. I just want you guys not to sit you're like, oh God, more. But that was the easy part, because it's where you do the work. Just remember, the plant doesn't take away all your issues or concerns or anything like that. Don't put that perception like, oh, after this, I want it to begin. No, it's still work. It's just going to start opening up the highways and the channels for everything to start making sense, because you're being rewired. And with that, some of you are going to feel like you're cracking, because there's even more of that matrix going pop, 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 popping through all these little channels that, as you know, if you've done Reiki on someone and you start clearing them, and how they may start jumping and moving as that energy starts to move through their bodies. So understand there is no specific way, right way or wrong way to feel after ceremony. It's just being, because it may feel like you just had your head cut off, because some of that is what it was, ego. And if you were battling ego, your head may feel tight and heavy, or light if you let it go. So I'm going to turn it over to Zema LoveFire to share her wisdom with us tonight, and the goodies that she's going to teach us. So welcome, Zema, all the way from the ATL.
All the way from ATL. Peace, love, and light. Greetings to everyone. I consider everyone to be family on this path. So greetings to your family. And I was trying to find my note page. Oh yeah, that shoe's very busy today. Okay. Well, I am Zema LoveFire. I've been on this shamanic path for 13 plus years now. Working with all types of plant medicines, from ayahuasca to San Pedro to Hape, to psilocybin, of course, as well as some other things. But those are the main ones that I tend to do the most of, as well as cacao. Kind of ended up on this path unexpectedly. I am also what I call a jazz fusion medicine music artist. And if we have time, maybe I'll break out my drum and do a little something at the end of my presentation, since you all just got done doing ceremony. And so sharing in that way is one of my favorite things, since you, said that I do sing. So I'd love to share that later on. I got into this work basically because I went through what was called a shamanic death. Back in 2012, 2013, where I got extremely sick. If you don't know, a lot of times when you're going through an upgrade, or you're transitioning into a different version of yourself, that can be led in through sickness or some type of accident, like hitting your head, or some type of injury, or something along those lines. For me, it came in through illness, where I had vertigo. I lost a lot of weight. I couldn't stand up and walk without getting dizzy. My ex-husband at the time had to carry me around the house, carry me to the restroom. I had a fever of about almost 103 that I couldn't break for weeks. I wasn't responding to any herbs or medications, crystals, anything that I'd known to be healing modalities for myself was not working out. And this went on for almost a month. My skin broke out so bad. When I tell y'all, I don't even look like the same person I looked like back then. Like, my whole face broke out in this like black mask of just bumps, and I literally flipped inside out. I didn't recognize myself, and I lost a bunch of weight. But I knew it was a spiritual thing because my dreams when I could sleep was very profound and very vivid and full of very detailed messages. So this one night, after I'd had enough of everything I'd been going through, as I describe it, I had one foot in the grave and the other foot was on a banana peel. That's how bad it was. I got beaten down into submission over that month process to where basically I would say that God and my spirit team and the ancestors really just wanted me to go into full submission to the divine, where I had to detach from everything I thought I knew, everything I thought I understood, however I felt about myself, I had to denounce all of that, down to my name, who I was, what I thought. I was like, okay, look, God, I know nothing. I got to the place of nothingness where I was like, I know nothing, I am nothing, and I don't know what this is. So this one night, and I also want to mention the way I cried at that time, the release that I was experiencing at that time was so profound that I literally, and I've never seen this before since myself, but I would cry and there was like streams of water that would come all the way from the bottom. It wasn't like just tear, like it was like a stream of water. I had to change my shirt several times throughout the day because I literally had streams of water coming out of my face. And so I said this prayer one night. I said, okay, I said, God, I don't know what this is. I don't know what's happening, but I know I'm suffering so bad that I'm tired. So I said, God, I need you to do two things for me. I need you to either put me on the right path so that I can get well and do whatever your will is for me, or if I fulfilled my time here, just don't let me wake up in the morning. That was my prayer, because I didn't have the strength to take my own life. So I'm begging God to just don't let me wake up in the morning, because that's how bad the suffering was. So the very next day, my neighbor across the street, him and his wife, a couple, still good friends with them to this day, he just happens to pop over and comes across the street and knocks on the door. My ex-husband answers the door and he's like, hey, I want to talk to you and your wife about something. So my husband comes and carries me up to the living room and sits me on the sofa. He said, last night when I was in the bed, I had this message that came to me that I needed to invite you all to this sacred plant medicine ceremony, and it's an ayahuasca ceremony. I'd never heard the name of it before in my life. It's a very unusual way of spelling it, as well. So I had him write the name down on a piece of paper so that I could research it. And the ceremony was coming up in about 3.5 weeks. So he tells us about it. I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy. This is insane, but this has to be the answer, because I said that prayer the night before, and this man's telling me that he got this message to tell us about this secret sacred ceremony last night. So the transmission was strong, and God heard my prayers. So after he left, we didn't necessarily say yes. We said, give us a couple of days to look into this and get online and do some research and see if it resonates with us. So, I mustered up the strength to do that. And I'm looking at all these people talking about their experiences. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is both intriguing and terrifying at the same time. So at the moment that I decided that I was going to go and commit to going to this plant medicine ceremony, I began to start healing. Within the next 48 to 72 hours, my fever had broke. My appetite started to slowly come back in. The vertigo went away. And I could get up and walk around without getting dizzy, even to the point where around about 3 or 4 days in, a little less than a week, I could drive again, because you can't drive if you're having dizzy spells, right? Thank you, Kim. I appreciate the hearts. And so what I'm saying to you is, you know, the mycelium network, which is what we'll be talking about. I'm going to be, talking about the mycelium womb. But the mycelium network is such a powerful thing that just my mere acceptance of what was being offered to me began to heal me before I even got the opportunity to taste and sit with the medicine. The ceremony started for me way before I got there. And that's one of the things I really want to get y'all to understand, is that really, if you look at your life, your whole life is a ceremony, okay? From beginning to end. When you were born, your mother's contractions is your first contract, okay? The contract of your birth was activated by your mother's contractions, okay? So you were already initiated through that contract of this lifetime in the first place. So the initiation of our lives, along with our whole life being a whole long drawn out, for some of us, who are granted long life, is a whole ceremony, okay? So I get to the ceremony. I was well enough. I was probably at about 70%, strong enough to get there. I put on a couple of pounds. Of course, my skin was still very much out of order. I definitely wasn't 100%, but the point was I was strong enough to go, and that's all I wanted. And I had nothing to lose. So, I don't have any children, so I'm like, hey, like I have nothing to lose. So I got there. We were only supposed to stay Friday night. It was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We couldn't leave. There's something about plant medicines, and when you really get tapped in, where if you're not supposed to leave, it doesn't matter what you try to do, you get stuck. Whether it's a plethora of conversations with interesting people, just learning things and just being in the vibration, you get stuck. And so it was October, it was cold, it was kind of icy. We were up in the Georgia mountains. So the shaman kept saying, if you aren't staying for this night, you guys have like 30, 45 more minutes before you guys can leave, because I don't want anybody leaving in the dark because it's icy. You need to be able to drive in daylight. So we completely missed that window, and we ended up having to stay and pay for another night. So we're there Saturday night. But the first night was just so profound, and just grandmother, which we also call ayahuasca, she just hugged me. She loved on me. She talked about my music and just all of these beautiful memories. And I'm looking outside, even though there's no leaves in the third dimension on everything. Everything is bare, but on the medicine, I'm seeing this vibrant leaves and everything's glowing. It's these neon colors. So I'm just like, I'm deep in. And so I was like, I don't know what the big deal is. Everybody's, it's cool. But then the next day, that Saturday, that's when the real work came in. And grandmother was like, yeah, now we're going to get down to it. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. This ain't what yesterday was. So just saying that every time you approach or you consume or sit with plant medicines, every ceremony is going to be different. It's never going to be alike. So don't ever, when you have a ceremony, expect or have the same expectation every time you sit with it, okay? Because you're going deeper in and you're tapping into deeper levels. Therefore, different things are going to come up. And because we tend to bury a lot of our emotional stuff connected to our traumas very deep in, sometimes a lot of that heavier stuff might not come up till the third time or the fourth time or the fifth time and so forth. Or for some people, it depends on what the medicine is. Some people respond better to psilocybin. Some people respond better to hape. Some people respond better to ayahuasca and so forth. So there's also what the medicine is and how many times you're integrating with that medicine. So this second night, grandmother, I'm having this psychic conversation. She said, we got to get you together because you're going to be doing this work. I mean, I heard it, but there was so many other things going on. I didn't really take to it that way. Well, skipping forward to the next morning after the ceremony, we have what's called an integration circle where everybody kind of shares a little bit of what their experience was. And before we started the integration, we're having some light fruit for breakfast. The shaman comes over and he's putting this special beaded bracelet on my wrist. He says, let me see your hand. And I'm just like, we're sitting on the floor, everybody's chit-chatting, and I just raise my hand. He slides this bracelet on, and I'm just like, oh, okay, like, thank you. Like, because he's not putting it on anybody else. So I'm not really understanding. And then he says, and he kneels down, he says, I'm giving you this because I'm supposed to be training you to do this work. I was just like, so I hadn't said anything to anybody. I hadn't shared that even with my husband at the time was even there. I hadn't even mentioned that that was the message I received. And here comes this shaman who I just met coming telling me this, so he heard the message right along with me. So that's how I got into it. Just a quick backstory. So when you're supposed to, get into ceremonial work or plant medicines, whether it's on the serving side or the receiving side, there's a calling that happens either way. So the fact that all of you are here is it's never a coincidence. It's never, everything is in alignment. You're supposed to be here. We're supposed to be having this conversation. You're supposed to know, Sister Asha, this is all divine alignment. And this is all connected to the mycelium network. Okay, the mycelium network is so vast that it picks and puts people together from all over the world, all over the US. I'm sure there's people here that are in different states, including myself, different things like that. So it's just a remarkable thing when you really get into it. Okay, so I'm going to move on past my introduction. It's kind of long, but I just kind of love to share the story of how I got into all of this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this screen share and see if I can. Okay, good. Here we go. Thank you, ancestors, for not making this too difficult. Because all right. Can you all see? Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. All right.
There it is.
Perfect. So I consider myself to be a mom, not in the sense of, well, you know what? I haven't birthed children, but as women, we're all mothers on some levels, whether you're a caretaker, a good sister, a good auntie, a good niece, whatever that looks like. We all have the propensity to be mothering in some way, shape, or form. Okay. But in this case, what the ancient spirits have told me is that I'm a mother of mycelium. Okay. And that entails a lot. I kind of rather go with that than just saying, oh, I'm a shaman or a calendero or all of these other different titles, that come. But Mother of Mycelium is my true title that was given to me through the ancient ones and the actual plant medicine kingdom and plant spirits, and my sitting and communicating with them through the mycelium network. So I get very deep into this, but jumping right in. So come on, the first slide. So let's just kind of go over real quick. What is mycelium? So mycelium is the vegetative root-like structure of a fungus composed of a network of thread-like structures that is often hidden beneath the soil or other substrates and is responsible for the growth and nutrient absorption of fungus. What is a fungus? They're organisms with rigid cell walls that reproduce by spreading microscopic spores. They're not plants, but most closely related to animals. Fungi are some of the most widespread organisms in the world. They play many roles in nature, breaking down organic matter, releasing nutrients into the soil and atmosphere, and forming beneficial associations with other organisms. Okay, are humans a fungus? Humans are not fungus, but we do share a common ancestor in DNA. So with that, they've traced back to at least 1 billion years of us having a common ancestor to fungus between, the plant world and humans. And fungi can be found on and in the human body, including the skin, the mouth, and gastrointestinal tract. And a fun fact is mushrooms share more DNA with humans than with plants. Okay. So, you know, I'm going over some preliminary stuff because it's important to really understand some of the scientific bearings of mycelium and plants and the connection, just to connect all the dots together in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so mycelium and reproduction. Is there a connection of fungus to human production? So seminal fluid can hold and transport bacteria, fungi, along with parasites and viruses that provide adequate conditions, that can provide adequate conditions for microorganism survival in seminal plasma. Okay, and studies have identified various microorganisms, including fungi, that are present in the vaginal microbiome, which plays a crucial role in reproductive health. A microbiome is a collection of microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, and fungi, and other tiny life forms. Okay, so you have to learn how to read between the lines when you do some of this scientific study, because they hide so much and they shroud so much in lingo that you have to learn how to read this kind of stuff through your third eye. And that's one of the things that we really get when we work with plant medicines, entheogenic medicines, and really tapping into the mycelium network, and also through meditation and breathing exercises, and just generally working on yourself as a spiritual being. When you start getting into things, and as one of my Cherokee Native American godmothers taught us, that we don't just look at things, we look into things, which allows you to see the other forms of something. Because even on as a Sufi, you know, Ramadan, happy Ramadan Mubarak to anyone on here who may be fasting or who's practicing Ramadan. But on the Sufi side of Islam, one of the things they talk about is the fact that, oh my goodness, I just lost what I was gonna say. Hold on, it'll come back to me. But anyway, I'll come back around, because for some reason that jumped out my head. But anyway, fungi and humans do have similarities. So, tiny life forms. I was talking about the fact that when you see they say other tiny life forms, you know, that is definitely talking about, and can include talking about, a fetus, okay? Because that is a tiny life form that is being created. But just something as simple as saying other tiny life forms will get by you if you aren't paying attention or looking at it through your third eye, okay? And okay, so tiny life forms that live together in a specific environment, like the human body and the ecosystem. Okay, so the human body holding life, the womb is its own ecosystem. Okay, so we are the as above, so below. The inner is the outer, the macro, the micro. So we are a reflection of nature, and nature is a reflection of us. So there is no separation in that. So that's one of the other reasons why our connection to this planet and to cosmic energy makes so much sense, is because we are cosmic dust, right along with being clay, animated clay, if you will, at the same time. Fungi and humans share many similarities in their biology and genetics, such as shared genetic material, where we share identical genes, okay, including those involved in metabolism, DNA repair, and cell signaling. We also share similar cell structures, including cell membranes, mitochondria, and ribosomes. Fungi and humans use similar signaling pathways to communicate between cells and respond to the environment. Okay, it's pretty simple. So what is cell signaling? Okay, I'm taking y'all through this because I'm definitely leading up to the big aha. Okay, so cell communication, where cells exchange information to coordinate behaviors that respond to their environment and regulate various cellular processes such as hormones, neurotransmitters, growth factors, and receptors on cell structures. What is this talking about, right? So if we look at gene expression, the regulation of gene transcript and translation. So we're talking about when two gene pools or two bloodlines come together and share transcripts, or We can call that Akashic record information. We can call that bloodline, DNA information. All of that will fall into that when we're talking about procreation, okay? And how that translates into that being between those two bloodlines that are trying to create life together, okay? Cell proliferation is the regulation of cell growth and division, okay? So if you know what we call a zygote, you know, I'm also a doula, so what we call a zygote, when conception happens, there is cell growth and division, okay? So cell differentiation, the specialization of cells into specific cell types. So these specific cell types is conducive to a fetus, a human being coming together, okay? And then cell survival, the regulation of cell death and survival pathways, okay? So understand too that cell survival in the sense of reproductive spiritual energy in lieu of the mycelium network, the two gene pools, the two bloodlines coming together on an energetic level have to be in alignment and have to be in agreement, okay? The difference is when it's not in agreement, this is typically when a woman loses a child, whether it's miscarriage or stillbirth or something, or some really hard birth defects or deformities. Things like this are when the gene pools either don't mix well or aren't going to mix at all. So when you think about this on a level of the mycelium network, bringing these two people together to create life, a lot of times, you know, it's already kind of written, predestined, because the mycelium network also holds history. It also holds past, present, and future at the same time. So the profundity of when a woman conceives, the fact that she's literally only ovulating for so many hours in a day. You know, they'll tell you to try every other day or, you know, to be on this pattern. But the reality is it's literally somewhere between 8 and 12 hours in a 24-hour period. So there's something even profound about that when we talk about timing and how in the background, your spirit team, which I say is your angels, your archangels, your ancestors, and whatever other beings that are traveling and walking with you, that come together with this other person's beings and y'all, and there's an energetic thing that's happening with the connection. And what's deep about it is the fact that we know that people can do this and not even know each other. It's we had a little bit too many drinks at the club and something them happened later on at the house. You know what I'm saying? So it's not even that you have to know each other on a physical level, but you know each other on a spiritual level in connection to the mycelium network. And the mycelium network is also psychic. It's also energetic. It's not just what we see as the roots, right? In, you know, the ground. You know, when if you go pull up mycelium network and you look at pictures, they're going to show you trees and, you know, and the roots and the connection, you know, but that signifies that, you know, if all of the trees in your neighborhood or even trees in the world, like they'll tell you that all of the trees across the world, doesn't matter if the land masses are separated by water or not, the root, you know, the root setup, okay, the conglomerate of roots, they're communicating with each other energetically, even if they don't physically have a connection, obviously, to trees in other countries and other continents. There's still an energetic connection, and we are a part of that energetic connection. This is the reason why plant medicines resonates with us so much, is because we're all a part of that. So when we hear people say, oh, we're a part of the all, we are the all, that's exactly what it's saying. The mycelium network connects us all. One breath, same sun, same moon, everything is in alignment in that way. Okay, so but dysregulation of cell signaling pathways can contribute to various diseases, including cancer, neurological disorders, and immune disorders as well. But the thing about some of these plant medicines is a lot of these plant medicines have been known to come in and do corrective work on a cellular, spiritual, emotional, and physical level to allow you to be able to heal from that and move forward. Because a lot of immune disorders and neurological disorders and stuff is a lot of times energetically induced. Okay, most people who are in the so-called crazy house or maybe on mental medications and stuff are really some of the most brilliant people that didn't know how to control it, that didn't know what they had, that constantly is around people that's telling them that they're crazy, or because they're speaking from such a higher space that most people on a mundane level don't even know what's happening. So they end up kind of having like a psychotic break, because sometimes the energy is so big and so vast and so strong that they don't know how to balance it out. So that's another thing about these plant medicines that we do. It helps you be able to balance out and ground down into your energy, ground down into who you are, ground down into your purpose. Okay. So moving on to the next slide. So I wanted you to get a visual of, the mycelium network and the womb connection. So on the left, we have the mycelium plant network, which is basically interesting because it's almost like an upside down tree either way. Because you think about a tree with the leaves on one end and then the roots on the bottom kind of still spread up. So it's almost like you got tree foliage on both ends in a sense. But the placenta also has that same tree on it. Okay, so the umbilical cord, the umbilical cord is very powerful when we're talking about or stem cells. Okay, it's very important when we're talking about the womb connection and when we're talking about the placenta as well, because we know that they both have a similar function. The same way that the roots speak to each other. Like if there's a tree that is in a place where it's not getting as much sunlight or as much water because maybe it's behind some other trees, it's being blocked off with buildings or whatever the case may be, it can send out a signal. Hey, I'm in distress. I'm getting dehydrated. I need more liquid. I need more fluids. I need more nutrients. So the other trees in the area receive that call, and through the mycelium network, it sends those nutrients in electromagnetic pulses and stuff to keep that tree energetically together and hydrated. Same thing with when a mother is pregnant. There's such a beautiful thing that happens because the umbilical cord is the communicator in the same way of the mycelium network with the planet and with the earth, and how the mother and the fetus is communicating. So with those electromagnetic pulses as well. And so if the mother has a weakness in one of her organs, just say one of her kidneys are stressed out or something's going on with her heart, there's a signal that happens between the mother and the fetus where the fetus will actually send out an electromagnetic pulse within the mother's body. And also what that does is it signifies to like the white blood cells and to the immune system to, hey, go and do some repair on that heart, go do some repair on that kidney. Okay, same thing. Like I said, the nature represents us and we represent nature. This is the connection. Okay. And this is the reason why they don't want us to have access to our stem cells. If you have a child and you leave your placenta at the hospital, please rest assured, no, especially if you are a melanated woman. If you left your placenta and didn't take it home with you, they pretty much sold it to a pharmaceutical company for no less than $5,000. And when it's a melanated placenta, it can go up as high as 15 grand. And they do not cut you in on any of that. Okay, and they'll just tell you that it's medical waste. And me being a doula, we've had to fight a couple of times. They're like, well, why do you want it? Why do you want it? Why do you want it? Since you argue with me about body parts that don't belong to you, the question is, why do you want it? Because doctors absolutely get a kickback. So just understand that. There's a reason why they charge you so much money to freeze your stem cells and things like that as well. This is the reason why, you know, we're getting back into birthrights as far as doing lotus births and things like that, is because the baby is able to receive all of the stem cells out of the placenta. So even after the child is born and the mother and the child has been severed through the umbilical cord, it's still a strong connection between you and your mother, because you already know that if a lactating mother hears her child cry, she starts lactating. Okay, it could be a room full of crying babies, but that mama know which one of them babies that's crying is hers. She know if her baby in there crying or not. You know, your child could be at school and you just have a premonition that something's going on. Then you get a phone call from the nurse saying that your child, you know, is sick and you need to come pick them up because they got a fever. These are all types of examples of how that mycelium and psychic connection operates in our everyday lives. Okay, it's no different from when you say you have a premonition, or when you say you have deja vu. All of these things are energetically a part of the mycelium network. And the mycelium network just simply is a conglomerate of the all. You know, everybody's thoughts, you know, Akashic records, you know, cosmic records, all kinds of things that we can tap into. And so the plant medicines is really the cheat sheet, because this is the reason why a lot of Buddhists and a lot of different spiritual sectors are known for high amounts of meditation. Okay, you have people that meditate for 18 hours out of the day. You have people that, you know, just sit in nature and they just meditate. And, you know, that's because they're able to tap into what we call a state of samadhi. You know, and that state of samadhi just means that you're tapped into your inner peace. You're tapped into the higher realm. So you're in straight communication with the divine. You're receiving a lot of uploads and downloads. So you kind of almost step into this alternate reality that you're always living in. But because we have all of these components already in us, we already have entheogenic components within our body. But because we've been so far removed through time, through society, through things that they hide from us, things that they don't want us to know, you know, we're not aware of those things like that. But because the divine is so intelligent, here comes the plant medicine kingdom, the entheogenic kingdom, to remind us, to get us back into a certain kind of alignment, and to be able to not have to. The blessing is that we don't necessarily have to go and sit and meditate for hours upon hours every day anymore, because, you know, the divine, you know, God has given us this cheat sheet of these plant medicines to kind of help us get over the hurdle and kind of get right to it. You know, because time is speeding up. Things used to change every 100,000 years, 300,000 years, every bit. Now we're on every 26,000 years. There's a major upgrade that happens on this planet. And so that was the whole big deal around 2012, when everybody was like, oh, what's going on? And you know, it kind of happened in 1999. There was something that happened then. And then 2012, you know, was the big shabiggity bang. But it was really a changing of the guard, where a lot of the masculine energy started going more back into the divine feminine. So we're still in that influx, you know, and this is the reason why, you know, you could start to see more female leadership. You know, the fact that we almost had, you know, a female president, you know, things like that, that started happening. But over the course of the next 50, you know, plus years, it's going to get to a place where a lot of the divine feminine is going to be reinstated, because we've been under the code of the patriarch for a really long time. And so now that we're at the changing of the guards, because really the mycelium network is very much female. We say Mother Earth for a reason. So because the mycelium network is more female than anything, this is the reason why we're seeing an emergence of a lot of these plant medicines over the course of the last 10 or 15 years, is because of that feminine energy coming in and pushing these types of things out there into the world for people like us to have access to, so that we can get into the divine feminine for various reasons. Because going into the divine feminine energy is where we rebirth and where transformation happens. So this is why when you do any plant medicines, you tend to have some type of transformative experience. Okay. So moving right along here. All right, so I already said, as above, as below. As humans, we're a direct reflection of nature in motion. The idea of being animated clay or fungi and being mammals of the animal kingdom plays a major role in our natural functions. Mycelium is the body, in the body, facilitates communication of nutrients and resource sharing. In the womb, the mother's body communicates with the fetus through the umbilical cord that also transfers food, nutrients, and electrical pulses based on the mother's emotions. And I kind of went over this already, but if the fetus detects that the mother has an organ that is weak, it can signal that reparative stem cells are sent to repair and fortify that organ and its organ system. The electrical impulse communication between the mother and the child is a symbiotic relationship of shared nutrients, stress communication, and information access to what is present in their shared environment. This is the exact same function of the mycelium network in nature with the plant kingdom, okay? So I'm moving to the next slide. Mycelium and the DNA. Just like the mycelium network of fungi and plants, the body also holds history, okay, or DNA records. When a mother conceives, the genes of the mother and father must be in agreement, and that creation through the sharing of historical Akashic information being introduced through sperm and egg integration. If the agreement is not in alignment, conception can occur. If the two energies cannot agree, a loss of pregnancy or extreme forms of deformation can occur. The information exchange between the genes are environmental memory of past and nutrient availability. When they say environmental memory of the past, we're talking about ancestral energy there. Okay? I'm saying we're reading between the lines. We're reading this through the third eye. So we're talking about the transference also of the past and ancestral energy that is also coming in as a part of the contractual agreement between these two bloodlines collaborating. Okay. Genetic memory, sharing of genetic information from one generation to the next. Okay, so this is why when we talk about as divine feminine, when you hear about the mitochondrial Eve, right? Because all women have the Eve gene that is connected to the first original, woman, so to speak, right? And so we all have that, and that is what gives us the ability to reproduce and give life in the first place. All right. Sharing of genetic information from one generation to the next, allowing for the connection of ancestors to be retained. Network memory, the storing and transmitting of information about surrounding environment in the presence of other nutrients and organisms. Okay, so when we talk about the surrounding environment, on a DNA level, we're really talking about where the gene pool is connected to as far as land mass, as far as other lifetimes, that you may have lived, as well as the DNA connection between your ancestors, where they may have lived, because we already know that we can have ancestries, that can be from other places. We know Africa, you could have ancestry from Haiti, you can have ancestry, of course, from North America, you can have ancestry from Australia, so that is also something that is connected to the DNA as well. And this is the thing, most children remember a lot of this stuff up until it used to be 7, but sometimes between 5 and 7. You can have some really powerful conversations with toddlers. Okay, they remember a lot more. If you're around younger children, ask them just simply, and I'm telling you, it's so profound, and I've seen it work every time in my experience. If you're around a child who's somewhere between 2 and 5, maybe even 4, 2 and 4, I'll say. Just ask them simply, do you remember anything before you were born? Just ask. Don't make it a big deal. You know, they could be playing with their blocks and Legos. Just ask them in regular conversation. You know, hey, do you remember anything before you were born or before you came here? You'll be very surprised. You'll be very surprised. Okay. Chemical memory. The production and storing of various chemicals such as antibiotics and toxins, which can provide information about our past interactions with other organisms. As mycelium holds history, so does DNA. So when we talk about chemical memory, okay, so what we're talking about is, just say that you had a lifetime that you may have lived where you caught the Black Plague and you didn't make it, you know, or some type of illness or something like that. Sometimes that can come in on your DNA and not be a problem. And sometimes it can come in on your DNA as something that needs to express itself physically, you know. So we're talking about genetic issues that you can have, right? You know, people say, oh, well, heart disease runs in my family or dementia runs in my family. You know, these are also connected to chemical things, you know, as well, that are on the DNA too. Okay. I'm making good time. All right. So plants in the human body. Why do plants and entheogens have such an impact on the body? As I said earlier, it's because it's the same body, all right? You know, we're just animated clay, really. Because once the breath, you know, the breath, you know, is the spirit, you know, and it's what activates and you know, the breath and the soul. So it's like, once you lose the breath, you know, you just go back to becoming clay, you know, so you get put back in the ground, right? And so this is the reason why, you know, because these entheogens, you know, are coming out of the earth. It's coming from the plant kingdom. And as I already said earlier, that fungus in the plant kingdom is more connected to animal, you know, or humans, or we're considered to be mammals in the animal kingdom, just a more smarter or, you know, advanced, if you will. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna say we smarter than fungi, because that's really the mycelium network is really powerful. But I will say that, you know, but in the grand scheme of things, we talk about horses and pigs and things like that. Of course, you know, we build buildings and we make things and we travel and we have vehicles. So we're talking about, you know, that level of advancement. But when you think about entheogens and how it impacts us, like I already said, it's our cheat sheet, you know. But what's even more profound is to think about, because nobody really knows the answer, but when you think about what was the level of consciousness of the first human beings that figured out what an entheogen was and how to use it in the first place. Like, for instance, ayahuasca is 2 different plants that are boiled together. Okay, the siapi root and some other leaves. I forget the name right off, but they boil this together for hours. Okay, and you can't have the experience with just one of them. You have to have them boiled down together in order for you. So I'm just saying, you have to think about how profound it is that whoever the first person is that received that download from the divine, from the mycelium network, there had to been some kind of communication between that person and mycelium network that was so profound for you to just be sitting there and be like, you know what, I'm gonna go get these leaves and these branches and I'm gonna boil this together and we gonna make something happen. You know, or who the first person that figured out that psilocybin did what it did, or that you could create something called hape and it does what it does, or plant, you know, or snake medicine, or Cambo, and all of these different things. Just the fact that humans was at a level of consciousness to even come to the idea that we could do this and that these things exist for our usage if that doesn't speak to the intelligence of the divine and how we are directly connected to it, then you miss the message, because that's very profound. How does melanin play a role in our connection in response to mycelium fungus and entheogens? Listen, melanin activates the medicine on a whole nother level. And it's not racism, it's biology, it's just spiritual, it just is what it is. And there's no racism in this. It's just what it is. Biologically, we know that melanin, as a neurotransmitter, is more powerful. Melanated people have a wider range of flavor. That's why we cook the way we do. We see colors more vibrant than non-melanated people. And so on a ceremonial spiritual level, we already know that we're the spiritual progenitors on the planet, okay? Nobody's more spiritual than us. Nobody's more connected to the land than we are. And that says a lot. And and most of the communities across the world of people who are some of the beginning people to practice plant medicines, whether you're talking about Peru, Hawaii, South America, Mexico, Brazil, whatever, Costa Rica, all these different places that have access to a rainforest or something that have some form of plant medicines, peyote or whatever that is, these are mostly brown and Black melanated people, and we've kind of had a takeover, of a lot of these things, and I think we're in a place now where we're starting to take that back for ourselves and reconnect with that. Okay. So that's the connection. The mycelium network functions a lot like melanin does as well, as far as the way it's able to communicate on a neurotransmission level. Okay. So when we talk about neuro, of course, we're talking about, just the mind and the mind connection, but we're also talking about the spiritual mind connection of things. Okay. What is the primordial womb and how does it tie into birth and rebirth in relation to mycelium? Okay. So the primordial womb in Kemet, they call it Mother Newt. It's like a picture of a blue woman, usually with all these stars kind of, drawn on her. And it's like this black sky. So when we do any type of plant medicines, or when we're dealing with any type of birth or rebirth, really, when people talk about shadow work, see, this is where they hide stuff from us. That's why I love talking about this. When we hear people, whenever you hear someone talk about shadow work, they're talking about the cosmic mother. They're talking about the cosmic womb. They're talking about the divine feminine energy, because we've been so far removed from the divine feminine, because we've been under this patriarchal energy for so long, that the dark womb or the dark mother has now been referred to as shadows, as the shadow, as the darkness, as the night. But everything comes out of the darkness. For those 9 months that you're in the womb, you are in complete darkness, being formulated and created. So when we get on these plant medicines, it takes us back into the primordial rebirthing space, so that we can address and heal and deal with our traumas, so that we can get back to our alignment and get back into a state of equilibrium, and also begin to tap into our purpose. And so, because a lot of people don't understand that shadow work is mothering work, is the work of the mother, and the rebirthing work. So this is the reason why you can do a plant medicine ceremony and come out of that feeling renewed, or feeling, lighter, or having received some messages, or having some type of clarity, or having your creativity opened up in some way, shape, or form, or something along those lines. And sometimes, it takes time. You're not going to get everything in one ceremony. If you're in your 50s or 60s, 40s or 30s, you can't expect to sit down in one ceremony and have multiple generations of your past lifetimes addressed in one sitting, because when you sit with plant medicines, you're not only addressing this lifetime, you're also addressing past lifetimes. And that's going to take some time and practice and being consistent and showing up back to ceremonial circles. Okay. And also, when you do plant medicines and you sit with the medicine, it's not just about you. Sometimes you might find that you're sitting for your grandmother. Sometimes you might find that you're sitting for your aunties or for somebody else in your family. Sometimes you're showing up for yourself and for other people, because the mycelium is so intelligent that it knows there ain't no way your grandmama gonna come sit with this medicine, so you're gonna have to do some of the work for her. It's deep. It's really deep. And when I tell you that I've been through all of those levels, like it's been times I've been in ceremony, and as soon as I drink the medicine, say, okay, you working for your grandmama tonight. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, so sometimes it's bigger than you, because you may be the only person in your current generation that finds their way to the mycelium network on this level through plant medicines. Therefore, you have a responsibility, because nobody else is in alignment to do it, because nobody else in your bloodline has the level of consciousness that you do, because you're that one. That's why you're that black sheep. I promise you, everybody on this call right now probably considers themselves to be the black sheep of their family. Tell me I'm lying. Okay? Everybody on this call, somebody done told you that you're different in your family, you think different. She not like us. He not like us. You know what I mean? They know that you different. And you probably have went through a lot of hardships with your family because of it. You probably had to cut off some friends because they didn't understand you. All of that comes with your upgrades. Okay? You came in as an upgraded individual already. So that's why I said none of this is happenstance. All of this is in alignment. For whatever reason, you was the one in your DNA bloodline that was chosen at this particular time to do the work that you're now doing right now. So praise God that you showed up. You're in alignment. Okay. Now, what is parthenogenesis? See, now we're about to go there. Okay. This is a reproductive process in which an organism develops from an egg cell without the fertilization by a male or by sperm, a form of asexual reproduction without the involvement of sperm. Parthenos means virgin, and genesis means origin or creation. Okay, hold on now. Y'all need to know Genesis actually means genes of Isis. Come on now, we about to look. I love talking about this because see, we about to get into it. Okay? The genes of Isis. And it is a derivative of the word genius. Okay? Every time you hear them say the word genius, they talking about the black woman or the divine feminine. Period. We have genius on our genes, okay? And you know, and so the full translation is the genesis of her genius. The woman represents the divine feminine or the fem in nine. Every time you hear the word feminine, they're talking about the feminine energy in accordance with nine energy, because nine represents birth and transformation. So it's no coincidence that the first book of the Bible is called Genesis. They telling you right there what it is. How is the first book of the Bible called Genesis? They telling you that everybody comes in here through the genes of Isis or the primordial womb or the divine mother. Is there anybody on this phone call that got here outside of the womb? Because if so, I need to know you and we need to have a conversation. Okay? Because if you didn't come here through a womb, so I'm just saying, all of our stuff is hidden in plain sight. So we're at the point where these plant medicines is helping us decode and decipher what has been taken and hidden from us. That is what the profundity of using plant medicines is for you to remember and to put back together your fragmented pieces. You're giving yourself the opportunity to be whole again and to no longer be fragmented in your experience, in your life. You're so blessed to be here and experience this, because there's going to be a lot of people that's not going to get here. So you already advanced, whether you realize that right now or not. The mere fact that you're in a class like this, you're advanced. All right, so just a few little things. Female, the male is feminine first, as the spelling of the word tells the secret. Every time you see female, fem means feminine. Woman, soft, gentle. Okay? Female. Because everybody in the womb is female before something switches up in the DNA and you become male. Everybody's female starting out in the womb. Okay? And it's interesting too, because we're going to talk about Ramadan for a second, which we happen to be in right now. Okay? Ramadan is the 9th month according to the Muslim lunar calendar, and it's said to be under the secret of 9. So Islam uses the lunar calendar, whereas the Gregorian calendar is a solar calendar. Okay? Initially, calendars were 13 months, which also represents the divine feminine. Okay? But why is it under the secret of 9? Because 9, like I already said, is the number of birth and rebirth. A woman is pregnant for 9 months, right? And so with that being said, even the spiritual essence of Ramadan, they understand that, okay, so we're fasting for 30 days in Ramadan. So you're walking into the shadow work or the primordial waters of rebirthing and going through a transformation for these 30 days. So that's what's happening with Ramadan. Okay? 30 days of going back into your rebirthing and transformation. Also, Ramadan is kicked off by the viewing of the crescent moon in the solar system. Ramadan doesn't start until the imams, you know, or the sheikhs, which I'm actually Sheikh Zema LoveFire, sees the crescent moon. The crescent moon is the mothers, is the divine feminine. Whenever you hear about the crescent moon, it's hidden language for divine feminine, okay? So the average female cycle is 29 days. The sighting of the crescent moon kicks off Ramadan, and the crescent moon represents divine feminine. I just said that, okay. Together, see, there's words where they throw that in there. The word together, to get her, or to gather the women, or the entering of the moon phases through the maiden, okay? The crescent moon also represents the maiden, which is kind of like Oshun over on the African traditional religion side. Oshun is fertility. She's youthful. She's creativity, honey, the color yellow and green or coral colors, depending on what side you're studying on. Okay, but don't get it mixed up, because the flip side of Oshun is the vulture, which represents the dark primordial side of the mothers with the Oshun pantheon. Okay, so there's balance in that, right? So 13 is the number of the divine. feminine, as there's actually 13 calendar months, as all calendars was originally lunar and not solar. 13 has been linked to feminine mysticism, sacred geometry, and goddess energy. And the serpent is a symbol of the divine feminine, representing life force, fertility, rebirth, and regeneration. Let me tell y'all something. When you talk about the Garden of Eden and they talk about the serpent at the tree, having a conversation with Eve and tricking her into eating off of this tree, all of that whole stuff is basically a conversation about the energy and the impact and the divine feminine that actually is the original tree of life. We represent the tree of life. That's us. That's our science. That's the divine feminine science. You think that all of those temples that they knocked down way back in the day when they said, oh, we burned down all those libraries and stuff, that was our stuff that they burned down. And no, they didn't burn down those books. It's right over there under the Vatican. They kept it. They kept it. You have to ask yourself, why would we want to tear down all of this stuff and we know they're powerful? No, it's because it was about usurping the divine feminine's energy and destroying the remnants of it. But they needed to have the information so that they can use it against us. Okay? So the further you go back in history, the woman is God. The further back you go, the divine feminine is God. And then at some point, there was wars that happened. And you know, they told you a little bit about it when they talked to you about the Salem witch trials and the Salem witch hunts. If you don't recall that, go back and research it, because that had a lot to do with when they were tearing us down, killing us. They used to do crazy stuff like they tie like boulders to your feet and throw you down in the river, throw you in the ocean or whatever. And if you couldn't break loose and swim back up to the surface, then that meant that you weren't a witch. But if you got loose, if you got loose, then that meant you were a witch. That's how they tell you had to die to prove that you weren't a witch or whatever. But really, that was all about them defacing our stuff, tearing down all of our statues, tearing down our temples, because when you ask yourself, where's our temple of Isis? What happened to it? That was one of those libraries that they burned down and stole from us. And they took away what's called it's like our anecdotal seat, our sacramental seat, okay? And the Vatican, where a lot of that was at, they took that a lot and put people on there that wasn't supposed to be on there, okay? So there's a lot that went on with the tearing down of us, okay, as a collective. Because I always tell people, y'all got to remember that women were enslaved before any man was first. We were the first ones to be enslaved, then everybody else. And that was pretty much in all races. Women were enslaved in all races, okay? And I just wanted to show you the picture of what the crescent moon, so if you ever see this represents the divine feminine and the maiden, and they call this a triple moon emblem here. So whenever you see that, that's talking about the divine feminine, okay? So I'm trying to check what somebody wrote in this chat, and then I'll be ready to open up the floor for, why this won't let me open up the floor for any questions. Trying to see if anybody, oh, so true, I mean. Okay, so there we go. All right, I'm trying to stop share. All righty. So that's my presentation tonight, y'all. Thank you so much. So does anybody have any questions or any comments or anything you'd like to say or share? I'm here to listen and share whatever I can. don't all go at the same time now.
Well, I have a question. Do I raise my hand? Raise my hand. Okay. The whole time you were talking, I was thinking about a couple of things with me personally. I have issues with fibroids and was told basically I would never give birth, and I've resolved, like you said in the beginning, I've given birth in other ways. However, I am curious about my path in light of the physical challenge of giving birth and now connecting it to this work. And then my life path number is 9. So I'm wondering if me being born as a 9 is compensating for what my physical body could not do to kind of make sense of now this journey and this path that I'm on. Does that kind of make sense? What I asked?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're basically asking me kind of like, you see the connection, so you're trying to kind of figure out how to integrate that, or is that kind of
Well,
what
I'm
you're saying?
wondering if that's why because I've always wanted to give birth, and I've always felt like there was a part of me and my feminine self that I did not understand because I never walked through that journey. And I am extremely alpha masculine. I can be very protective mode. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm constantly like got to get things done and struggle sometimes to receive and to be in, excuse me, and to be in that divine feminine. So I'm wondering if part of my journey is I'm being called back to who I really am once bringing up my life path number, which is 9, which aligns with this teaching. I'm wondering if that is spirit's way of saying, hey, this is how I'm going to help her to get on track, to be ultimately who I, desired for her to be. Does that make sense? Did I explain?
Yes. Okay. So, well, the first thing that came into my consciousness for you is, you know, if you feel like, or if you've acknowledged that you have a receiving problem energetically, or even if it's physical, because even with fibroids, there's things you can do, whether that's, embolism, or a surgery or something like that, because having fibroids doesn't necessarily mean that you're infertile unless it's where they're placed at. But even with the right diet and a right herbal program and, doing the self work can get you there. However, though, on a psychological, energetic level, if you feel like you have an issue with receiving, you have to be able to receive in order to conceive. So if those two things aren't in alignment and aren't connecting, this thing saying my internet is unstable, so I'm sorry if I'm freezing up. But so if those two things aren't connecting or aren't in alignment, then there's one or two things that's happening. Either there's some more internal spiritual work that you need to do, and or this just could possibly not be a lifetime for you to bore children in that way. And you're to birth other things, or to maybe mentor children, or work with children in some other way. And sometimes as women, we have lifetimes where we may not be, that type of mother, even though we still have mothering and nurturing aspects. Like for myself, I don't have any children. I'm in my mid-40s. But they haven't found any physical reasons as to why, me and my ex-husband was together for 17 years, but didn't seem to be anything wrong with him or anything wrong with me. But he and I didn't really get along too well. So I finally had a priestess do a reading for me, and she said, that my ancestors didn't like the alignment and didn't want me to have children with him. Even though I love that man, even though, you know, I very much did want to have children and we tried, but I was told that I literally had an energetic block placed on my womb by my ancestors as it pertained to him and his bloodline. And, you know, it's deep because after us not being together, you know, since about 2015, so many more things have revealed themselves and came in as to actually, I'm grateful that I didn't. I'm grateful because it would have did more damage to my life than not. And actually, we did get pregnant, but because we weren't because energetically and on a DNA level, the alignment wasn't there, I lost the baby. So even with what I shared with y'all is even a part of my own story. You know, and the lady was like, yeah, they didn't want
I
to
think
have that child. Huh?
in this process is this blueprint. And like you said, from healing from other illnesses and with plant medicine allowing to release, it can unblock things that can cause us to not conceive. And I just say that from knowing the balance in the same place where you were at 40, I had a fibroid thinking that I couldn't have kids. I was already the same way. Oh, I birthed many. I had group homes. I had kids. So lo and behold, I was shocked when I popped up pregnant at 41. So it goes back to if it's time and things are in alignment, we've heard of people having partial hysterectomy tubes tied and still getting pregnant. So I think if we really listen to what we're talking about, if it's supposed to be, it's going to happen. And if it ain't happened, it's not supposed to happen. And that's where we have to be more in that place of still seeing the higher level of how we are in this system and who we are, that all is in divine accordance.
Absolutely.
Divine accordance.
I got a friend, my friend Carisha, she got her tubes tied and still had a baby, okay? What's for you is for you. I've had friends where they said both of your tubes is blocked off. There's no way. That woman got 5 kids now. Okay? My point is whatever is in store for you, you're going to have it. And there's not a doctor or anybody that can tell you, you know, they'll try to tell you, but they're not the be all end all. They're not the defining factor. God is, and your ancestors are, and your spirit team is, and your partner's spirit team is. And so at the end of the day, alignment is alignment. And so, yeah, so when you do, you know, the serious heavy plant medicines like the ayahuascas, the ibogas, you know, the those kind of more heavier ones, you know, those are the purgatory ones that tend to make people regurgitate. And the reason for that is the medicine goes into the body and it's sweeping and filtering. It's sweeping and filtering all your organs. It's sweeping and filtering your DNA. It's cleaning it's cleaning your womb. It's washing your eggs in there. It's pulling out the gunk. It's pulling out what we call psychic mucus. And it's gathering all of the stagnant energy and all of the energy that's blocking you in whatever way, whether that's a block on your womb, a block on your mind, a block on your soul, whatever that looks like. It's scraping all of that together and allowing it to be ejected out of the body. So with that process, anything can happen. With the healing that comes behind that and the clearing that comes behind that on a physical, energetic, spiritual, and mental level, anything can happen. Girl, you mess around and be pregnant with triplets. Anything can happen. So, my thing is if that's what you really want to do, work on your feminine energy, work on, focusing on that, focus on, your womb work, your clay packs and your castor oil packs and your feminine herbs and, your intermittent fasting and being strategic, writing about it in your journal, meditating about it. There's tribes in Africa where the women literally will write songs about their children, before they get there. Because what they say is, if you feel like you're supposed to have a child, you probably are. But if you feel like you're not supposed to, you probably won't. Both are true at the same time because you shape your reality. So yeah. I hope I kind of answered that.
Well, yeah, I don't necessarily want children at this point. I think I was tying but this was all great. I think I'm tying the number 9, my life path number 9.
Yeah.
The lessons that is here in the divine feminine that I was, I guess, saying that it's difficult to get if I haven't naturally walked out being a mom. And so that's essentially kind of where I was landing with it. Because
nine is the number of birth and rebirth, though. So you probably experienced a lot of that in your life, like a lot of transitional points, a lot of pivoting, a lot of redoing, resetting, a lot of different levels of change that's happened in your life that has been really profound. So with you having that 9, of course, you're going to experience a lot of birth and rebirth, and entering into this space of plant medicines, you're going to kick that up even more. So yeah, that's definitely going to come with this lifetime for you being in that 9 feminine frequency.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that may be what you're fighting. Because you're more comfortable in the masculine, or you feel, I'm a business, and we often feel like that's the role, we have to be in that role. Right. And then that's when it crossfires when you are in a relationship. I always say sometimes women, y'all acting like y'all got a 10-inch dick, and you walk around like you got big balls and you ain't even got balls. It's like, right.
And also, yeah. And Kim is cracking me up. And also, I think too, you have to look at the dynamic of your relationship too, because even when we're in a relationship, even if it's female and female, male and male, or male and female, there's always somebody in a relationship that's going to take on more of the masculine role and more of the feminine role, because we've kind of come to a place now where things are kind of interchangeable now. So, like if you're matching masculine energy with your husband, like if you the one who's really wearing the pants, or if you calling all the shots, you know what I'm saying? And because like my dude always telling me, you know what, you got it 90% of the time, but 10% I got it. But I'm very much, but I'm a Leo with a Capricorn moon and an Aries rising, and I'm on the cusp of Leo and Virgo. So my energy is very strong. For some people, it can come across as being masculine, but I'm still very much feminine, and I'm she, her, and but at the same time, for some people, they may consider me to be more aggressive than others. So maybe that's the reason why I don't have children, but I don't know. But I'm just saying that sometimes it's also, just the roles that you play in your relationship and who's carrying more of what, so some women are okay being in relationships with men who want to take your lead, as opposed to it being the traditional way of women taking a man's lead. And so, like what Sister, Aisha was saying, like, if you carry a lot of masculine energy, that could be one of the reasons why conception is a little bit harder for you. It's because sometimes you're not sitting in your pot, as they say. You know, all women kind of have this pot, you know, that you kind of sit in, you know, like just the womb is like the pot, you know, and it's all the connect, it's everything from, you know, if you hate your period every month and you always saying negative things about your body around that is impactful as well. Oh, I'm cramping, I hate my body, I hate this time of month, I hate this, I hate that. You know, words have power too. So it's even just the lack of gentleness that we can have with ourselves sometimes that energetically impact us as well. And just being too judgmental of ourselves and feeling inadequate, or that we can't do it when we really can, you know, because we've had hardships and things like that. You know, one of my sisters, you know, she has her children, but she had to go through a series of surgeries and all kinds of stuff. And then they had to do a procedure where they had to wash her husband's sperm and some solutions and all kinds of stuff they had to go through to have their kids. You know, and then some people, you know, there's IVF and artificial insemination. Like sometimes you can work around, you know, the regular normal ways of conception, you know. So that's what I said. The beauty about where we are right now and how technology is set up is that, you know, we have our cheat sheets where we can override certain things now, you know, where we previously, you know, may not have been able to. So there's a lot of women who've been able to have children because of some of these other technologies that are affording them that. And so, you know, I know several people that if it wasn't for those things, they wouldn't be parents, you know. So I see somebody said that they're a little overwhelmed. Why are you overwhelmed? I want to hear why you're overwhelmed. Who said that?
Tara.
No, not a bad way. Not a bad way, just a lot, like trying to think of a question. It's just like so much to like try and formulate, you know. I was just like, oh, so, but a lot of great information. A lot of it, I feel like it has resonated with me, and I'm in a similar situation as Sarah. So I'm taking all of that in. Also, it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is. It definitely can be a lot, you know. And you know, and that's the reason why, you know, we should try to meditate every day, because we need to be able to sit with ourselves and process. You know, we're you know, we don't process enough because as adults we're always adulting and we're always going and we're always thinking about what's next and who need to eat dinner and who need help with the homework and, you know, what errands need to get ran, what bill needs to get paid, you know, where I need to be at, what time work, you know, what time, you know. And you know, if you are a parent, you know, you have several jobs, not just your regular bread and butter. You know, you got to come home and deal with the children. And if there's a spouse of some sort, you have to deal with them. And, you know, and so we exert a lot of energy as women in general, just because so much is expected out of us in society, you know, and it comes with so many levels of soul contracts, you know, and so we get overwhelmed. And so, yeah, I understand that. And that's why, you know, and that's why we have the blessings of the plant medicines to help us, you know, work through some of the everyday things that we're dealing with, as well as some of the past life things that we're still dealing with that needs to be cleared and dealt with, as well as just genetically what we've inherited through our bloodline. Because sometimes a lot of what we're dealing with ain't even just our stuff. And we got to wash that off too. Because sometimes it's problematic because of the circle that we keep. Yeah. Anybody else had something they wanted to say or share?
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just had questions about ayahuasca. So how many times have you sat with ayahuasca?
I stopped counting at 250 ceremonies.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah, I couldn't keep up. It started running together.
Okay, so right now I feel like I've always wanted, that's one of the plant medicines I would love to work with, but I didn't think that you could do that many. Like I thought it was something like shrooms, you do a 7 gram 7 gram journey, and you're clear, or ayahuasca you do it 1 or 2 times and you clear. So do you do it per journey in your life, transition in your life? Do you do it when it calls you? Like I don't know what steps to take or what lets you know that you're ready for the ayahuasca journey.
So I actually do plant medicine retreats and ceremonies. I'm a fully trained shamanic, you know, person. So with that being said, I usually do 3 to 4 ceremonies, usually every season change. So I got something going on this weekend coming up, a private situation with a small group of people coming up this Saturday here in Atlanta, but typically we're up in the Georgia mountains. Um, some shamans that you may meet, in passing, they're doing ceremonies every weekend. And, I understand that you need to be able to process. But because, I went through intense training for about 7 or 8 years, I had to sit a lot and I had to travel a lot. And so that's what really, started adding up. And when you're training, like you don't get to say no, you just you go with it. And so, but for me, sometimes I take the medicine at home by myself and I journey with myself, which is something I only recommend that you do if you've at least sat with the medicine, at least 5 or 6 times, and you know how you are with the medicine, you've integrated fully with the medicine. But how you know that you feel ready for it is that you just simply feel like you're ready for it. It's really just that simple. Like if you feel called to it, if you feel like you want to try it, if there's a healthy, natural pulling, if you will, that you feel, then it's like, well, then try it. The only thing is, I have to vet everybody that sits with me because there's a health questionnaire. I need to know if you've had any type of mental imbalances, if you're on any type of medications, because the interaction between the medicine and certain medications doesn't work well together, and that could cause a seizure, a heart attack, or anything like that. I need to know, if you're on any specific kind of medications. There's certain medications like high blood pressure medication. If you have a heart murmur, certain things like that. If you've suffered from seizures and you've had one, within the last year, you can't sit with me. I need you to make sure that you're stabilized. So there's certain things that, I have to know to make sure that you're safe, and to know that just we're bringing down the probabilities of something happening that shouldn't, by and I don't do this because I'm just trying to make money, right? So you have some people out here that'll just take on clients because they're trying to make a buck, and they'll be like, oh, well, sign up for it and show up on this Saturday at this time, and here's what you need to pack and bring. They're not asking you any questions about your health and history to make sure that you're safe. They're not vetting, you're not vetting them, they're not vetting you. There's no safety precautions put in place. And I tell people, if you run across shamans like that, run as fast as you can, because they're not actually considering your health and your wellness in these ceremonies with these medicines, because these medicines is the truth, and it is not a game, and they are not to be played with. So I just take it very seriously. So yeah, that's how I'd answer that question. If you feel called to it, then the medicine is calling you and you're calling it. Like you're both looking for each other. Yeah. Okay. And then the green shirt. Yes. Niñas.
Yes, I didn't. Good evening. I just wanted to thank you for all the information that you did share. It is a lot to absorb. But I just wanted to share that when after this weekend, that a lot of the things that you have been saying, and a lot of things just in general right now, conversations that are having, like with people, like everything is like aligning. Like I talked about the snake today. We talked about the umbilical cord. Just everything is aligning. And so I just wanted to thank you for that, because it's complete confirmation what you said from the very beginning. We're all here for a certain, because we're supposed to be here. And so I thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Give thanks.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else? Awesome. And so, yeah, you know, if it's in, you know, a lot of times we're connected to a similar frequency, whether we realize that or not. You know, you start conversating with people and you realize you're very much on the same page and have a lot of overlapping similarities, or you start talking about things that you've both been thinking about, you know, and you're like, wait, I was just thinking about that. I was just talking about that the other day. Or, oh my God, I just had that thought. Or I just, you know, so we're not separate. You know, a lot of it is very much, you know, a part of the collective consciousness that we're all kind of operating through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally. It's so, yeah, it's, again, you know, I've nothing's a coincidence to me anymore. You know, everything for me, like I said, is a big ceremony, and it just feels like everything is just in alignment. You know, whether you can't see that or not, it's an alignment, you know?
Yeah.
Anybody else had anything they wanted to say or share?
I'd like to just say that this was very informative. Agree with a lot to digest, but so on time. I have my little sister wants to be a mom. She's very much showing her masculine energy. She's very much so the surroundings need to change, like all of the information, because rather than preach to her, I can go at her with a plan. Like, hey, if you can do some of these things, and you just inform me of all these areas that we can address together. And then about the checking on their health before we administer plant-based medicines to them. you know um you would think that logically, but hey, it doesn't come to everybody's mind. um, so yes, all of the information was so good, so right on time.
Thank you,
I think even
Nicole. I
that
appreciate
aspect too,
that.
we had talked about the whole thing of partaking in ceremony, but also that whole experience of even when we sit or administer, that is another form of ceremony as well. So always realize it's two different experiences in it, but at the end of the day, whether you are offering the ceremony, you're still in ceremony, because me and Zema was talking about that before, that as that person, as shamanic practice, you're holding space. You're in both sides of the realm at those times of holding space in ceremonies. You got to be over here, but you cannot let it overtake you that you're not able to be in both. And so it comes with that whole experience of trusting the medicine, that when you are, whatever comes to you is what's supposed to come to you. You have to trust the space that you're holding in that. But most importantly, as a healer, we still have to remember that it's not us. If we're doing a shamanic work, just remember, if we just release the titles, it's not
Right, we're
us
the conduits.
right. We're just a
We're just,
vessel.
yeah.
So release the
This is
title of what you're doing, because I always say if you go into it too much and you're doing too much, you're gonna feel it. That means you were doing too much. You weren't supposed to be doing that. That's why you're feeling heavy sometimes after. Really, in what we do, we shouldn't be heavy afterwards. That means you're in there trying to fix something, you may be too much in your head trying to figure out. If you're the vessel, you know when your body needs to rest. But even after a ceremony, it should be like, oh, I need to rest. Not like, oh, I feel like I done got beat up. So that's, you have to learn that balance of it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this, just with my years of experience, if you're someone that struggles with surrendering, it's that's one of the first lessons that plant medicines is going to teach you, is the art of surrendering, because you can't get what you need when you won't allow yourself to surrender to the experience that you showed up for. So you have to understand that, like, and that's just in life in general. If in life in general you have a hard time just with surrender, with just being comfortable in your skin. The medicines are going to come in and be like, hey, you need to, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and so because you don't get as much when you don't allow yourself to surrender to the process. You know, so like I was saying earlier, if you have a receiving problem, that's going to work against you in some areas. And then if you have a
Financial too.
overgiving problem, you're draining yourself, fatiguing yourself, you know. And I'm gonna tell y'all this, you know, I was having this conversation because it's so many things that people say that just don't add up to me. I call it a bunch of bad math mouthers. And I'm like, when people say things like, is your glass half full or is it half empty? And of course the optimistic people are going to say, my glass is half full, you know. And you're gonna never hear, because everybody wants to be optimistic. So I've never heard one person ever say that my glass is half full. Even the most depressed person you know is going to say that glass is half full and not half empty. Okay. But spiritual law says that we give from a cup that overflows. So if you're at a 50% deficit of something, why are you happy and optimistic about that? There's not nowhere in your life that you would go to a grocery store and buy a gallon of milk, but it's only halfway filled. Not nowhere would you go to a restaurant and order a plate of food and they bring you a half a plate and you pay full price for that. So why is that different in any other way in your life? If you're giving from a half point place, that means that you're already in red, already in a deficit, and all you're doing is draining your life force. So if you ever feel like your cup is not overflowing, you're not in position to be paying too much forward or to be giving to too much, because what you need to focus on is filling your vessel. So when, again, going back to these plant medicines, they're a cheat sheet because they help you fill your vessel. The reason why God gave us this cheat sheet is because we got to go to work. We got bills. We got things to do. Ain't none of us got time to be sitting around for 18 hours a day meditating to reach this state of clarity, you know, and purpose, you know, that the plant medicines can help us get to in 7 to 8 hours. Okay. You know, ayahuasca ceremony is somewhere between 6 to 8, 9 hours. You can sit down, get a journey, go where you need to go, get some messages, get some downloads, get some uploads. You get in, you get out, and you've been transformed on a certain level. And now you can go back into the world feeling stronger, feeling better, and feeling more in alignment with yourself. Because we don't have time for all that other stuff right now. I'd love to be able to do that all day, but somebody got to snap these peas and somebody got to pay this water bill. So at the end of the day, life is lifing. And so I'm so grateful that we have these types of things that we can utilize to even if it's just for a little while, we're getting so much from mere hours that is life changing. Okay.
Kim, real quickly, wanted to say, I wanted to make sure reframe something in your thought pattern that's not necessarily correct. Just because somebody take a 7 gram or take the hero's journey don't mean they don't ever do it again. All you can do as often as you want. It goes back to what calls you. It's no set rules on how often or when you do it, or how, as people that may do 7 grams every quarter, if that's what they want to do to go on their journeys. I always tell people, just make sure you don't use the medicine as a crutch. You still got to do the work, but it's not always, oh, let me go to this, get my answers. Let me go to this. Sometimes it'll shut you down, or you may be in ceremony not getting no answers because they're like, nope, you done did this too many times. You know what you need to know now. We're not giving you any messages in ceremony. So is the medicines will work for you. If you just say yes, like you said, that's where it all begins. And even if you say yes now and don't take that journey to a year later, it's already working. It's going to start talking. Like some people just start seeing the frog that's called to do Cambo, you know. You may start getting grandmother energy. They call Aya grandmother. So the teacher is the shrooms. You know, the shrooms already talk to you. So It's just you got to see what's calling to you. And different plant medicines have different energy, for masculine energy and feminine energy too.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that back up, because that did get away from me. But one of the things I want to say about plant medicines, it is important that you pace yourself and take your time, because you need to be able to process every time you sit with that medicine what it's doing or has done for you. Because like she said, even after the ceremony is still going. So, you know, you could get an influx of dreams, ideas, you know, creative things, you know, like answers to questions you've been asking yourself forever. You know, like all of a sudden there's this clearing that happens in your inner space. So with that being said, that's the reason why I don't overdo or over offer and over serve plant medicines, because I understand that. And I also, what the medicine has taught me, I don't know if y'all have gotten to the point of any of you are familiar with Baba Kalindi Ayi, who we lost a couple of years ago, who was a major psilocybin user. And, you know, to the point where he do somewhere between 30 and 50 grams at one sitting. Okay. And I remember when I first started getting into Baba Kalindi, I remember when, you know, I've watched a lot of his videos, you know, on YouTube, very, very profound, very, very powerful teachings. Some things I agree with him on and some things I didn't. I'm not a big fan of large dosages of plant medicines like that. And the reason being is because I understand that the body, when we talk about the chakra systems and we talk about just the energy systems in general, I kind of look at it as our fuse boxes. We have fuse boxes, like energetic fuse boxes, right? And so if we get overwhelmed with too much light in the body, because see, when you do plant medicines, it is a form of light coming out of nature. So it builds up your light quotient. Okay. And so this is something on the energy side. When you get into Reiki and stuff like that, you start to kind of learn more about your light quotient. But if you get overfilled with too much light, you have to exit your body. Your flesh can no longer house that amount of light. Okay. So that's why it's important to pace yourself, because if not, when you take in too much light, it blows your energetic fuses. So I remember about a year or so before he passed, I was looking at something on his page, something he was just some little snippets he had taken from some conference that he had spoke at. And I remember just looking at him energetically, and something in my higher self said, he better be careful. He's close to blowing his fuses. And that next year, you know, he actually passed from a heart attack. And Baba Kalindi would take those large dosages of medicine and he would go lay in his bed and go journey that way. He didn't believe in ceremonial aspects of plant medicines. He felt like this is something you should do by yourself. I definitely disagree with that. But we come from two different schools of thought on that, because some people need guidance. And that's scary to do something like that by yourself. But that's how he practiced it. And you have to be careful about that, you know. So because I have amazing teachers, they taught me how to set my light quotient at 90% so that I cannot go past a certain level and end up having to get forced out of my body because I have more light than my body can contain. So this is the side of plant medicines that you don't tend to hear people talk about, is how it can build up your light quotient. And if you're doing it too much, too fast, too much, too fast, too much, too fast, you're not actually allowing yourself to process that light. And then it actually can work against you because you're not processing. You just keep, you know, and you actually need to be able to process that. I know when I get to capacity, is because I energetically feel full. My cellular body feels so full that I can't do anything else. I have to take time off. Like I'm like, oh, for a couple of months, I just need to process. My cells are too full and I have to take a break so that I can assimilate and come down some. And then I can come back to work. So yeah. Anybody else? Because if nobody else has anything else to say, if I have about 5 more minutes, I'd love to do a medicine song for y'all right quick. Is that okay? I have time for that?
We always love music.
All right. Let me grab my medicine drum from across the room here. Hang on. All right. Okay. Well, one of the songs I like to share is called Ho'oponopono. If anyone's ever heard of it, it's from our Hawaiian ancestors. And Ho'oponopono means forgiveness and compassion. So I always like to do this song so that we can remember that everybody's going through something. So we all need to have compassion. We got Mercury in retrograde, a bunch of stuff is retrograde in Venus right now. So, people feeling tired and fatigued and, worn out energetically, but we're in recovery. This is a 9-year, by the way. So Sister Jacera, this is a 9 years. This is a good year, for working on, yourself, and even, for anybody to work on divine feminine. And whenever we get into a 9-year, we call that a Jubilee year. So this is the first year of recovery that we're really having after coming from the pandemic or plandemic or whatever you want to call it, because energetically, a lot of people's adrenal glands are shot. A lot of people, have been grieving because you may have lost somebody during COVID, or if you didn't, you knew somebody that lost somebody, so you still had some type of connection. So, we're all recovering, we're all healing. And so, we have to just remember that everybody's going through something and may still be cycling through a lot of that energy as well as we're moving forward in our recovery phase. Okay. So this is Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I thank you. I love you. Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I thank you. I love you. best version of myself. Please forgive me for not showing up as I should. I thank you for showing me unconditional love. I love you. Pano, 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 pano. 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 Hey, Thank you for listening. I appreciate you all. Please follow me on Instagram. I'm getting over a little cold. I did my best. So thank you.
No, that was wonderful. Okay, so sister, again, that is one of the songs that have been coming to me. I knew of that song and that the lyrics for like years ago, and it just started coming back in December. And actually, I don't know if everybody else remembers, but they were playing that song at the ceremony that we did on Saturday too. It came up on Saturday too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's beautiful. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate
Zema, what's your
it.
Instagram?
I made it through.
I'm sorry.
So my Instagram is just Zema LoveFire. ZemaLoveFire. Just like how you see it on my screen, but just without the shaker part. There is some kind of imposter on there, whatever, but it's the one where I have a brown hat on and I have an afro and some red earrings. That's the right one. So you follow me, I'll definitely follow you back. And, you know, you can keep up with, you know, whatever I have going on and, you know, different things, and just stay in touch with me. And yeah, and I love to stay in touch with you guys too. And this was phenomenal. Thank you so much for the invitation.
How many do we need to have to do for you to do an Aya with us? How many as a group would be feasible for you to come do Aya with us?
If I'm coming to you, the minimum typically I like to see is 10.
Okay.
I don't tend to do more than 20 people at a time. So a minimum of 10, 15 would be more ideal, but the minimum would be 10.
Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah.
So,
and you know, and y'all can always come to me too if you need to, but I don't mind traveling. You know, I don't mind traveling at all. I just typically, you know, it just comes down to whatever the setup is and things like that, because privacy is a big deal. And, you know, sometimes there's a lot of noise, and, you know, I have a team. So, you know, we're drumming, and there's didgeridoos, and there's hand drums, and there's shakereys, and there's a lot of live music and all of that going on. So, you know, typically if we just in some regular neighborhood, somebody gonna probably call the cops. So that's why I tend to, you know, work outside of the city. You know, I always say, you know, I won't serve a grandmother anymore in the city, but I'll do everything else, you know, for the most part. So even when I'm traveling, it's just really important that it's a really private place
Right.
where we don't have to be like quiet, you know, and
Right.
whispering and tiptoeing around and, you know, and things like that. So yeah, definitely. And if that's the case, we can definitely talk about that and figure out what that would look like and take it from there.
And lastly, I tell everybody in doing your research, don't look at the videos of non-melanated people doing it. I just want
Seriously.
to say that experience will have you horrified and not want to do it. And like she said, it's not saying we're better, but we have a different response to the medicine.
Mhm.
So if you have to be a researcher, don't research, don't let that be your point of reference.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to say something about that right quick about how we do journey differently, because in my training, I had the opportunity to sit in predominantly, you know, white ceremonies as well as predominantly white ceremonies where I was either the only Black person present or one of two or three. And what I'll tell you is they're completely different. It's like two totally different experiences altogether. Shocked me because honestly, when we deal with the plant medicines, we're actually more in tune and connected to the mycelium network. Our stuff goes into ancestral stuff. We can do some multi-dimensional jumping around. We can do a lot of stuff, but for us, it comes in more like we're going to school sometimes, like there's this spirit school. We're receiving a lot of messages. We're having conversations with, you know, psychic conversations, maybe even with other beings, or reconnecting with our past selves. There's a lot of real internal work that we tend to do on that kind of level, but we carry a lot of ancestral energy into our ceremonies. Like I always have to build an altar, and I always have to welcome in the ancestors and the mothers and the fathers and all of this stuff. You know, white ceremonies, they're not concerned with no altars. They're not really gonna do that. You know, the music is not as good. And I'm just being honest. And a lot of their stuff really is, they tend to just get more into dimensional jumping. They don't do, they're not really into ancestral. Their ancestral stuff doesn't really come up. And honestly, there's been times when they do, and I'm keeping it 100 with y'all because I want y'all to understand this. When they do tap into their ancestral work, it's not good. Like the response is traumatic for them because they have the ancestors that own slaves that's coming in that they have to have accountability for in the ceremony. So it hurts because they have to deal with the reality that my ancestors did bad things to other human beings on this planet. So their experience with that. So I've literally seen them rolling around on the floor screaming as if they're getting whipped like their ancestors whipped us. Okay? I'm telling you this because most people won't tell you, but you need to know that. And then when we get in integration the next morning after they went through that, I mean, they just sit there and scream and holler and they're like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like they're like, they get into this space where they get humbled. They get humbled is what I'm saying. And it's traumatic. It's a traumatic, humbling process. And then when we get in integration the next morning where we're like, whatever you want to share, and they're just like, I just want to say to the few Black people that are here that I'm so sorry on behalf of my ancestors. Like, it's like that.
Wow.
Like they get humble and they get very apologetic. And it can get really intense. So yeah, it's very different. It's very different. Wait, Chantel face though. She like, oh. It's Chantel's face for me.
It gets real. It is very interesting.
Real.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, there's very clear differences. Once you journey, you know, if you get to do it enough times, you know what I'm saying, you definitely see a clear, concise difference. See, they want to go talk to aliens and stuff. They don't want to talk to their ancestors.
Right.
That's what I'm saying when I say about they like the dimension jumps up. They want to go talk to, honey, they rather go talk to E.T. They rather go find Darth Vader. They rather do everything and anything and go anywhere than talk to their ancestors. Okay, I'm just trying to tell you. So they trying to, yeah, they trying to be on their Doctor Strange. They not trying to be on no ancestry. So yeah, so we do it way different. We do it way different. And I'm just gonna be honest, predominantly Black ceremonial circles is bomb. It's bomb. The music is bomb. Like
The singing,
the synergy,
yes.
just the collective cultural, energy that we bring, the synergy. When all of our ancestors start marching in together, they be dancing and they're rejoicing for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally different, and you can feel it. And I tell them, I say, hey, y'all, the mothers are coming in, the ancestors are here. You know what I'm saying? And when they come in, we just get up and we dance and we usher them in. Like there's rhythm going on. You know what I'm saying? We got rhythm, we got synergy. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's a collective, and you just don't get that in their ceremonies. I just be like, man, when the sun gonna come up, it's time to go. You know what I'm saying? Because the ceremony is over when the sun comes up. Yeah. And because grandmother, we call it grandmother because it's a feminine plant. The leaves and the branches are feminine. That's why we call it the grandmother. And it's the second strongest plant medicine on the planet. The number one is called iboga out of Africa. And we call it the father or grandfather. Okay. So we don't do ayahuasca until after the sun goes down. Usually my ceremonies start at 11, maybe midnight. And we stop when the sun comes up. So we're going into the daylight hours. You work with ayahuasca during the so-called shadow hours, if you will, or overnight, because it's a feminine plant and it's dark. And so we already talked about the primordial womb and the rebirthing and the transformation. So that's why we use this feminine plant medicine, and we use it at night during the feminine shadow time. Okay, it's very specific with the protocols. The medicine teaches you how you're supposed to use it already just by its existence and what it is. So yeah, I know I don't mean to over talk here.
We're absorbing
it.
it.
It's coming up in my spirit to share. So I'm just floating at this point, whatever I need to say. Yeah. So right. So, but unless there's anything else, we're complete.
Right. Well, we thank you, love.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate your energy and the knowledge, and I'm sure it's going to be a couple of us wanting to gather. So
absolutely. And also know that I do spiritual baths. If you need a spiritual bath, I do divination readings as well. If you feel like you need that, especially going into the new year.
Head readings? You do head readings to know what's our Ori head? Do you do that?
I mean, I can, but probably not in the traditional sense of what people like. I do angel readings and things like that as well. So I actually do what's called a birth light reading, which is basically me looking at several aspects of yourself through several astrology systems, numerology, your Mayan, your birth chart, your birth tarot cards, your Enneagrams, all of that kind of stuff. And I put all of that together. And what's amazing about it is all of them are saying the same thing. So after I put all that together, I'm able to tell you, really what your gifts are, and it helps you understand your purpose when you get all of that put together at one time and present it to you in one package. So, so yeah, I do that as well. I do, Reiki certifications. I'm Reiki sessions, distance, all of that kind of stuff. And I know Sister Aisha do a lot of that stuff too. So, but yeah, but I offer a lot of different services. I would just say, check me out online, and and if something resonates with you, let me know. I make crystal elixirs, I write books, I do stuff. So, but yeah, so I do this full time, and I have been, for a minute. But I've been in the shamanic work, work study, life contractual obligation for over 13 years now. So
We thank you. Wonderful being y'all. Like I said, she was a sitter at my ceremony, and her spirit and her voice was just so soothing for the whole process. So definitely we'll be connecting soon. And y'all have her information if you have questions on all of this after you process. Don't inbox me. The portal is now closed. You had your chance. Y'all gotta go to her now. Thank you, Zema.
Exactly.
I
But
appreciate you.
Thank you.
absolutely. And if you
Love
need
y'all.
to just start,
Good seeing
love y'all
everybody.
too.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yep. Y'all stay safe. Love.
Yeah.